Federal voting rights legislation continues to be stalled on Capitol Hill. That might be putting it mildly. Last night, once again, the president called on the Senate to pass both voting rights bills. Take a listen.
The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act. And while you're at it, pass the Disclose Act so Americans know who's funding our election.
Cliff Albright is the co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, not many moments there for you last night, and not minutes on this subject, seconds. How many seconds did you count?
No, I think if we made it up to 40 seconds or if we made it up to a minute, then that would be generous. It's an improvement over last year's, but the bar was really set low last year because it was even less than what we saw last night. Nowhere near enough time being paid to what he says is the most fundamental issue, or the most fundamental right that we have. That he needed to demonstrate that in this speech. He didn't do so. In fact, in many ways, it was actually a step backwards. Because think about it, people are pointing out that he called for the passage of those two bills, but he did not go as far as what he had done in Georgia just last month or in January, where he explicitly called for modifying the filibuster in order to pass the bills. He didn't mention the filibuster at all last night when he made that call. So to a certain degree, he actually took a step backwards to where he was in 21 and not acknowledging where he had moved to in just a month or two ago.
Cliff, address your concerns to Black Americans who want that Aaron Sorkin West Wing moment where the president points to Joe Manchin, by the way, who was sitting with the Republicans, and Kirsten Sinema, get it done and have it on my desk by Monday. That didn't happen. So that being the case, where are we right now with regards to voting rights?
Yeah, so we're at a point similar to where we were last year, where we have got to continue to push for it, right? We got to continue to elevate it and raise the issue. We can't let people forget about it. So to that extent, we're glad that he at least mentioned it last night, but we have to continue to push the issue. That's part of what we'll be doing next week. We're coming up on the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And so we're going to continue to raise this issue, not just commemorating what took place in Selma 57 years ago, but continuing to push and raise the issue and make the demand for voting rights. The other thing that we're going to be doing, though, is as people are trying to move on and just talk about this election cycle, which began last night in Texas, where we also saw the impact of voter suppression. But as we're in this cycle and people want to just talk about the elections and mobilizing voters, part of what we're going to be doing is coming up with a voting rights contract, a list of bills, two of which the president mentioned last night, but also including modifying the filibuster so that when people are voting, particularly for senators, that they're not just running the risk that we send another Manchin or another Sinema to D.C. We need a contract signed in blood, if need be, like with their own signatures, but that these candidates have got to commit up front. If they want our votes, they got to commit up front to what they're going to do in D.C. That's the basis on which we can then hold them accountable. That's what we'll be doing to continue to push for voting rights.
Cliff, is it time for Democrats to walk away from Joe Manchin? As I mentioned, he was sitting with the Republicans last night during the State of the Union address. It reminds me, really, to tell you the truth, of your girlfriend showing up at the McDonald's wearing somebody else's class ring, and you're saying, well, she still likes me. I don't know whether or not you're looking at the tea leaves right now, but the Joe Manchin vote don't look too good.
No, and it's never been a reliable vote. And so that's why, we need to, we don't want to be a situation where, Democrats say, I broke up with you. And they say, oh, Manchin says, no, I broke up with you, right? We need to be acting proactively right now. That's why we're talking about this voting rights contract. That's why we're trying to key Senate seats that are up for grabs, not just defending Georgia and Arizona and other places, but, we're looking at Pennsylvania and Ohio, Wisconsin. There's a favorable map, but we've got to put in the work in order to win those seats, so that Joe Manchin's vote becomes irrelevant, so that Kirsten Sinema's vote becomes irrelevant. Not to mention that if DC was a state, if we had DC statehood, we'd have 2 senators right now that would make their votes be irrelevant. And so, yes, we can't wait for him to make the moves. Like you said, the writing is on the wall. We need to be acting proactively right now in order to send people that we know will be reliable votes on these issues of voting rights, as well as the rest of the agenda that Black voters are concerned with.
34% of the voters in the state of Louisiana are Black. John Kennedy is running for the Senate in Louisiana. John Kennedy, by the way, is a Rhodes Scholar, I believe it is. He's either Ivy League or a Rhodes Scholar, a former Democrat. Why not go after him if Joe Manchin ain't into you no more?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually looking at that Louisiana Senate race. You got Gary Chambers who's running down there. He's made some noise with some really interesting and provocative ads. But that's part of the problem.
Yeah, let's just lance the ball on that one. That's the brother sitting in the chair smoking a blunt and burning the Confederate flag.
Right.
I just want our audience to remember who we're talking about. But keep on going.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's part of the problem that we've seen, is that too often the establishment Democrats, the traditional Democrats, have written off parts of this country. That's literally why Latasha Brown and I formed Black Voters Matter Fund 5 years ago in the midst of that Alabama race, right, between Doug Jones and Roy Moore, because we believe that Black voters matter in all of these states, that no state needs to be written off or just discounted, that we need to be fighting these battles everywhere, and that we can win, and we are demonstrating that. And there's no reason why Louisiana can't be the same. After all, there's actually a Democratic governor in Louisiana, so there's no reason at all to write that state off. That's a winnable seat, especially when you got somebody like Kennedy, who I don't know if he's a Rhodes Scholar or an Ivy Leaguer, but if he is, that just goes to disrupt the notions around the talent that necessarily people assume comes with being a Rhodes Scholar, right? But at the end of the day, he's vulnerable. And especially in a state like Louisiana, but it takes investment, it takes commitment from the establishment, as well as incredible groundwork. We're going to do what we can do, but we need folks to take some of these races more seriously, including places like North Carolina, even including Florida, because the truth is we haven't seen the support for Val Demings in Florida the way that we need to see. And so if we want to make Manchin and Sinema's votes be irrelevant, if we want to prepare ourselves for an eventual defection, we have got to be putting in the work in all of these states to compete and to invest in communities and organizations that have got to do this work. And we've got to continue to raise this issue of voting rights. And we need the Department of Justice and the rest of the administration to do everything it can do to protect voters.
Cliff, I got 30 seconds left. What's your halftime speech right now? You're getting beat, and that's putting it mildly. Your quarterback is sitting on the other sideline right now, warming up with the other team. You got Murkowski in Alaska. You got North Carolina. You're right. You got Louisiana. What's your halftime speech? How are you going to get us across the finish line? Because Texas voted last night and thousands were disenfranchised.
Yep. Thousands were disenfranchised. But I also want to note that in the midst of that, though, we saw some incredible progressive gains in the state of Texas, right? Some great candidates that were winning. And I think one that's pushing an incumbent moderate Democrat, pushing them into at least a runoff. And so that's part of it, right? Looking at what we've been able to do so far. But the other part, 30 seconds, you said, we've been here before. Like I said, we're coming up on the Selma commemoration. In February of '65, Dr. King was in jail in Selma. A few months later, Bloody Sunday took place, and we know that changed the course of history. It's often darkest before the dawn. So even when you think sometimes that you're losing, you're really in the perfect position for our faith and for our work to show up.
And I will point out that the congressman who is trailing so far in Texas is under FBI investigation. So let's not celebrate gains that aren't necessarily gains, but something else. Cliff Albright is the co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. Halftime only. The rest of the game has yet to be played. Cliff, thanks for being with us.